The first part of the anime begins by showing a young man named Tatsumi trying to save a group of people in a horse carriage when they are being attacked by a giant dragon. He seems to have quite a great fighting ability because he can easily defeat the dragon with just one slash of his sword. The two men who boarded the horse carriage then got off and thanked him for saving them. Tatsumi informs that he is going to the capital in hopes of raising money for his impoverished village. Seeing his innocence, the two men advised him to be careful of the humans in the capital, who had even more cruel personalities than the monsters that Tatsumi had just defeated. Not long after, Tatsumi finally arrived in the capital and immediately enlisted as a mercenary. With his abilities as a swordsman, he could actually enlist as a royal soldier. However, because he was arrogant, he didn't even get any work and was expelled. Shortly afterwards, Tatsumi meets a woman who says she will help him get the job he wants. However, she asked him to treat her to a bar first, and he agreed. She said he should at least have acquaintances or a lot of money if he wanted to register as a royal soldier. Hearing this, Tatsumi took out a bag of money while boasting that he got the money from his hard work catching monsters on the way to the capital. After that, she took his money and told him that with that much money, Tatsumi would immediately become a commander. However, the innocent Tatsumi did not realize that he had been tricked by the woman until a bar waiter told him he had been tricked. Because he had no money, Tatsumi was forced to sleep on the side of the road, but he was soon invited by a rich girl named Arya to stay at her mansion. Arya and her family treat Tatsumi very well, and they ask him to tell her the reason for going to the capital. Knowing his desire to become a royal soldier, Arya's father warned him that their kingdom was surrounded by 3 kingdoms whose military strength could not be underestimated, and he might be stationed in the border area, which must be ready to fight in case of conflict. Upon learning that, Tatsumi, who was very confident with his fighting skills, said that he had prepared himself to face a fight anytime and anywhere. After that, he said he went to the capital with his 2 friends, Sayo and Iyasu. However, they were attacked by a group of robbers on the way, so they were separated. Tatsumi was not too worried about his 2 friends because they were good at fighting. However, Iyasu was terrible at determining direction, so he worried they might get lost. Seeing his determination, Arya's father told Tatsumi that he would ask for help from one of his acquaintances in the military to recruit Tatsumi to become a royal soldier. In fact, Arya's father will also help him find his 2 friends. The next day, when Tatsumi was dropping off Arya, who was shopping, he got into a serious conversation with one of her bodyguards, who told him that the emperor was actually a boy who didn't understand anything about his kingdom. Furthermore, the bodyguard said that it was the Prime Minister, Honest, who is a corrupt and tyrannical politician whose only agenda is to maintain his position of power. Hearing this, Tatsumi felt angry after knowing that the Prime Minister was the mastermind behind the suffering experienced by all the residents in his village. After that, the bodyguard told Tatsumi about Night Raid, a group of assassins who were wanted by the kingdom. Night Raid always targets the rich people in the capital and always acts at night. That night, Night Raid appeared at Arya's mansion, instantly killing her parents and the guards who tried to fight them. Tatsumi, who woke up from his sleep, rushed after her, fleeing to a warehouse with her bodyguards. But then, one of the Night Raid members, a girl named Akame, arrives there and prepares to attack Arya. Surprisingly, Akame didn't care about Tatsumi because he wasn't her target. She is also reluctant to slaughter the bodyguards, but because they attack her, she has no choice but to kill them. When Akame was about to kill Arya, Tatsumi rushed forward to protect her. Akame says she wouldn't hesitate to kill him if he tried to stop her from killing Arya. Even though he realized that Akame had abilities that might be greater than himself, Tatsumi still drew his sword, preparing to fight against her. Soon afterwards, Tatsumi and Akame engaged in a fierce battle until she managed to corner him. When Akame was about to kill him, suddenly, a woman who was also a member of Night Raid appeared. Her name was Leone, and she saved him because she turned out to be the person who deceived Tatsumi and took all his money when they were on a bar. Afterwards, Leone tells Tatsumi about the truth behind Arya's family, where they usually target immigrants from the village who are usually still as innocent as him. Arya and her family would invite the newcomers to stay in their homes and treat them very well at first. But after that, they would be tortured to death. Not long after, Tatsumi finds one of his friends, Sayo, in a lifeless state after being a victim of the cruelty of Arya's family. Arya argued that she didn't know about the torture at all. However, Tatsumi's friend, Iyasu, is also locked up there and tells him that Arya is the one who killed Sayo. Ultimately, Arya shows her true nature, who likes to torture people from the countryside. She boasts that she comes from a rich family, so she's free to do whatever she wants. Hearing that, Akame immediately prepares to kill her, but she is blocked by Tatsumi, who then draws his sword and kills Arya by slicing her in the stomach. After that, Tatsumi rushed to free Iyasu. However, Akame informs that Iyasu has been poisoned by Arya's mother and cannot be saved. Iyasu smiles when he sees Tatsumi kill Arya, and in his dying moments, he tells Tatsumi of how Sayo resisted until the very end. After killing Arya and her family, Akame and Leone prepare to return to their secret base. But then, Leone drags Tatsumi to come with them and decides that starting tonight, he will be a part of the night raid, and the other members don't seem to mind that. Arriving at the night raid headquarters, Leone then introduced the other night raid members to Tatsumi, most of whom were women. Even their leader is a woman named Agenda, an Imperial Army general. Despite the night raid members agreeing to accept Tatsumi from joining them, Agenda gave him a choice to accept or reject the offer. He then reveals that his purpose in coming to the capital was to become a royal soldier, but he becomes doubtful after learning how dilapidated and corrupt the government is. One of the night raid members, a man named Bula, tries to convince Tatsumi to join them, as night raid's goal is to help the Revolutionary Army's efforts to overthrow the corrupt prime minister and restore peace and order to the empire. Upon hearing that, Tatsumi eventually accepts to join the night raid and slowly begins to accept his new life, while still grieving over the loss of his friend. Agenda then asked Akame to train and guide him. Turned out, instead of guide him, she often asked him to do housework. One day, Leone tells about two men named Gamal and Ogre, who will be their next assassination target. Gamal is an oil trader who bribes, and Ogre, an imperial police officer, to make his business going well. She said that killing Gamal was easy enough, but that wasn't the case with Ogre, who was always surrounded by many of his men and had pretty great fighting skills. Even so, Leone had done her previous investigation and found Ogre had a habit of drinking in the center of the city. Because some night raid members are wanted, the posters have been scattered in the center of the city. Because of that, Leone volunteered to carry out an assassination mission this time because she was not on the police wanted list, so she could still roam freely. On the other hand, Tatsumi told Leone and the others that he also wanted to carry out the mission. But Akame doubts he can kill other people because before, he killed Arya. After all, Tatsumi was very angry when he discovered that Arya had tortured and killed his friends. However, Tatsumi asserted that he was able to kill Gamal and Ogre, especially after hearing the reason that their client was suffering from their actions. Upon hearing that, Akame said that she would only admit Tatsumi as a member of Night Raid if he succeeded in committing murder this time. Akame also reminded Tatsumi not to be arrogant because pride only leads to death. Leone then told Akame's past, who had been trained to become a professional assassin by the Imperial Army since she was a kid. In the past, Akame was sent to kill Agenda. However, after learning how dilapidated and corrupt the government in their current kingdom is, Akame decides to join the Revolutionary Army to fight the Prime Minister. Long story short, they finally carried out the assassination mission, where Akame and Leone could easily kill Gamal. Meanwhile, Tatsumi turns out to be assigned to kill the Ogre alone. At first, he had a hard time facing Ogre because his physical strength was quite formidable. Fortunately, in the end, Tatsumi managed to kill him and then reported his success to Agenda and the others. While Tatsumi was boasting about his great ability to kill people, Akame suddenly took off his clothes to ensure that he wasn't hurt. She did that because there was once a new member of Night Raid who didn't realize that he was poisoned after completing his first mission. She felt very relieved when he found out that Tatsumi was fine. The next day, Tatsumi and the Night Raid members seemed to be running inside after learning that a group of people had managed to infiltrate their secret base area. Yulat, who became a team with him, asked him to be careful because Tatsumi had never fought in groups. He then showed his true power to Tatsumi, where with that power, he defeated several people at once. The other Night Raid members look very serious in the fight against the intruders. Even Lubbock, who has a reputation as a playboy, shows his seriousness when fighting against his enemy, who is a beautiful woman. Ultimately, Tatsumi and the remaining Night Raid members manage to kill all the intruders. A few days later, Agenda pairs Tatsumi with one of the Night Raid members, a girl named Mine, to go to the capital. Mine, who is not included on the wanted list of the royal police, can roam freely in the capital and even spends her time shopping. At the same time, Tatsumi noticed that the residents there look gloomy and frustrated. Mine tells that only the rich can live in prosperity, while the poor are always oppressed and treated arbitrarily. Not only that, but if they put up a fight against the Prime Minister and his henchmen, they would be publicly executed. Meanwhile, at the palace, the Emperor, who was still very young, sentenced a minister to death for treason. The Emperor imposed the sentence at the instigation of the Prime Minister because he was an official who was very concerned about the welfare of the people, and opposed all the policies of the Prime Minister and his henchmen, who were hungry for power and only wanted to enrich themselves. Night Raid then gets a mission to kill an official who is one of the henchmen of the Prime Minister. Mine, who is a sniper, can easily kill her target, even when the target is in a crowd of people. On the other hand, when the royal guards try to locate the killer's whereabouts, they are intercepted by Leone and other night raid members assigned by Naojenda to kill the guards. After the fight, Leone said that the official had 5 bodyguards, whereas they killed only 4. This indicates that one bodyguard is still alive and may be looking for Mine and Tatsumi's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Tatsumi and Mine walked through the forest to the meeting location with the night raid members. She said she suffered harsh discrimination and racism for her half-foreign blood during her childhood. That's why she ran away with joining the Revolutionary Army, hoping there would be more accepting of different races when the army won. In the middle of their conversation, suddenly, the bodyguard appeared and immediately attacked them. Tatsumi was also involved in a fierce battle with the bodyguard, while Mine tried to shoot the bodyguard without hurting him. Realizing this, Tatsumi held the bodyguard's body so that Mine could focus more and easily fire shots in the right direction. She finally managed to shoot the bodyguard, killing him. Unfortunately, the bullet almost hit Tatsumi's head, so he was angry at Mine. Even so, she thanks him for saving her and finally acknowledges Tatsumi as a member of Night Raid. Leone and the rest of the Night Raid members finally arrive there, relieved that Mine and Tatsumi could get to know each other better. This is the end of the first part of this anime.